Well, welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. I am, as usual, Jodelle, and most of you will resonate with the fact that we are looking for perfect health. Now, living in an imperfect world doesn't make it very easy. However, perfection is still what we kind of aim for. But even if you miss it, you're still in a very good place. So we might not achieve perfect health, but we can still be in a very good place with our health. And today I'm talking to someone who pretty much got me started on working on perfect health. And in a logical, common sense approach. And even before my nutrition schooling, I picked up this individual's book, and it made so much logical, common sense to me that I had to develop all of my own curriculum based on this individual. So this guy is Paul Jaminet. And if you haven't heard of Paul Jaminet, then I think you might be excited, because this man embodies a lot of what another person that I love is Dr. Ray Peat. He embodies a lot of that. They both really have the perspective of opposing omega-6s and supporting saturated fats and favoring eating sufficient carbs to normalize metabolism and supporting the body with bone broth and opposing eating toxic foods like wheat and gluten and things like that. So Paul Jaminet is a brilliant astrophysicist with a PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley, and is the founder of a product or a company we're going to talk about in just a second. But I'm actually much more of a fan of his other PhD, which is the book, The Perfect Health Diet. So that PhD is what spurred me on to want to help people and actually get results with my clients for the first time, because it's such an easy approach to teach people how to eat from the cell standpoint, from a logical common sense standpoint. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And it was Paul's experience overcoming chronic illness that led him to develop his views of aging and disease presented in the Perfect Health Diet. So we're going to talk about that. He also regularly blogs at theperfecthealthdiet.com and is currently serving at a company called Angiex as president and COO. Angiex is developing a novel drug class, nuclear delivered antibody drug conjugates, if I can say that 5 times fast, with the potential to generate curative therapies for malignant solid cancers of any site of origin. So I'm so excited to talk to him about that and dive deep into that, as well as break down the Perfect Health Diet philosophy so that you can aim for a logical, common sense approach to your nutrition at a cellular level to achieve weight loss, cancer prevention, disease prevention, and really dial in that perfection that we're all looking for, even in an imperfect world. Okay, so we might discuss some trends in the pro-metabolic world that might not work for all and might work for others. And Paul takes a different approach with some of the philosophies of Ray Peat, which I'm really eager to introduce you guys to. So Paul, with that, welcome. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Jodelle. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. So I know I had a kind of a long-winded introduction, but there's so much that you and your philosophy has helped me with over the years. So I really wanted people to see that you offer a very common sense approach when you read this book. This book makes so much sense when you break it down at the level that you do. And that's why I wanted to open with that. So talk to me about the Perfect Health Diet. How did you come to that and the standpoint of eating for cellular health?
Yeah, so it was a long journey. So it's so I started having some personal health issues, starting in my 20s, but becoming more significant in my 30s. And doctors were totally useless. I just kind of gave up. Every few years I'd go back to the doctor and ask for some help, and I wouldn't get any. But then about 2003 or so, I learned about the paleo diet, and it made sense that, an ancestral approach, might be more helpful. And my diet at the time was very poor. So I had been an entrepreneur starting a software company, and before that, a scientist. So I was always working like, 60-hour weeks. And I would eat whatever was convenient. So I would, have like bread and cheese sandwiches and Coca-Cola, and that was, like 90% of my diet. So I figured, well, it should be easy to improve my diet. Let me try this paleo approach and see what happens. And so I did that, and it was the first thing I tried, which really made a difference in my health. So some symptoms got better, some new symptoms arose, but after, years where nothing had mattered and nothing had changed anything, the paleo diet, made a significant difference. And so that at least taught me that diet was important, and diet, could impact your health. And, so I knew I hadn't optimized my diet and I hadn't fixed all my issues, but at least I knew, I finally had a lever that would work, and, that could, have an effect on my issues. So I got fascinated by it and, started researching things and experimenting. And my initial implementation of paleo was a very low carb, actually ketogenic approach. And, basically very few carbs. And on that, I ended up, after about 8 months, developing scurvy. And that was partly because I was cooking all of my vegetables. I was eating plenty of vegetables, but I was cooking them, and that can destroy vitamin C. And I wasn't supplementing, so that taught me, oh, you can eat a paleo or natural whole foods diet and develop nutritional deficiencies. So I thought, well, I do believe in this, paleo, ancestral, natural whole foods approach, but I should, really look into nutrition and try to understand all the nutrients you need and where do you get them from, and how can you make sure that you're getting enough. And so that started the research project, and it ended up taking me 7 years to work through the literature and, everything that's known about nutrition, all the required nutrients, what's the optimal amount, what foods can you eat to get them, which ones are hard to get from foods, so it might be easier to supplement them than to get them from food. And, and by the time I had sifted through all that, and my wife and I had gotten our diets in compliance, then, and what we found is, first, our health got tremendously better, and then secondly, our food was really delicious, and and it corresponded to a lot of traditional cuisines, and that made sense too. That when you're eating a diet that is really beneficial, so our brain evolved to kind of motivate us to do what's good for us and what makes us healthy and helps us reproduce. And, so it makes sense that we should feel good when we're eating the right way. And, when our food is making us healthy, that our brain should make us happy. And, it makes sense that, traditional, especially royal cuisines, the cuisines for people who, had unlimited money and, access to ingredients, should be, both delicious, but also very nourishing and healthful. And, so that was fascinating. And so then I decided, well, we've learned all of this, we fixed our own health. And in my family, the generation ahead of me, my aunts and uncles, were, at the age where they're starting to have significant health issues. So I thought, oh, I should write up what I've learned and share it. And so I did that, made kind of a small pamphlet and shared it. And I thought, oh, well, I should share this more broadly with the world. So I started a blog and then started working on expanding it into a book. And so we published the first edition of the book in 2010, and then a second edition in 2012, and a paperback in 2013. And then we decided to refine it further. We need more experience. So I started a health retreat. And, on the order of like 130 people went through our health retreat. And that enabled us to, keep refining our curriculum and, instructions. And we got, better and better results every time. So we were learning how to teach people how to be healthy and what diseases, so I think in total we had over 100 different diseases that people came to the retreat with, and nearly all of them improved with our diet and lifestyle advice. And we tried to track them after the retreats and, see how they were doing. And, so it was really, intended to help the retreat guests, but also to, be kind of a scientific study, so they would come to the retreat for a week. They would be under our, eating our food, living our lifestyle. And, so we'd have control, and then they'd go home and we'd try and follow up. And, so it was a great learning experience. It worked the diet worked extremely well and gave us a lot of confidence. And so it was all a great experience. And then we had to kind of back off a little, because in 2015, my wife and I started a cancer therapy company, NGX, which you mentioned. And, so we haven't had a lot of time. We had to suspend the retreats, and we haven't had a lot of time for blogging. But we're looking forward to getting back to it. And I think, medicine, it's funny, in the Hippocratic Oath, the actual literal Greek, Hippocrates has his doctors make the oath that they'll use diet and lifestyle to heal people. And, and I think modern medicine, should get back to that. And there's still some things where, pharmaceutical drugs can help, and cancer is an example, which is what our company is trying to make a novel drug to treat cancer. But, there really should be an integrated approach, and diet and lifestyle should be the first recourse, not just some, ancillary thing that doctors don't pay much attention to.
Oh, 100%. Like, I think somehow we've missed that Hippocratic Oath in the last, 50 years or something. So I agree. As far as like the diet and lifestyle, like you just mentioned, what is the perfect health diet? How did you break that down?
Yeah, so in simple terms, how we recommend eating is, if you imagine dividing your plate up into quarters and have roughly an equal volume of meat, fish, or eggs, some starchy plant like potatoes or rice, some sweet plant like fruit, berries, beets, and vegetables as another quarter, and then flavor it with healthy fats, which would be typically dairy fats, like butter, sour cream, or coconut milk, are favorites. Healthy acids like lemon juice or vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and then an umami flavoring, something fermented, which could be, could be a cheese, like a grated Parmesan cheese, or it could be something like tamari sauce or fish sauce, or something fermented to get the nucleotides and other nutrients that come with fermented foods. So if you just have a mix of those four kinds of foods, and then those three kinds of flavorings, and you make your food delicious with them, then you'll have a very healthful diet. And there's a few more details which help to give balanced nutrition, like including some salmon for omega-3 and some extracellular matrix bearing things, like soups made with bones, joints, tendons, to get, you basically want to, eat all the ingredients to replenish your body and to replenish all parts of your body. And the connective tissue, has a different composition than, say, muscle meat. So if you only eat steak, then you won't get, quite the complete mix of ingredients to replenish every part of your body. But if you make soups and stews out of, bones, joints, tendons, then you'll get, a key part that a lot of people are missing. And egg yolks are another, very nutritious item to include in a menu in your diet. So we recommend about 3 egg yolks a day, and potentially more for women during pregnancy. So we have some, foods we call kind of supplemental foods. So you should think of them, kind of like a supplement, where you just take them routinely or get them routinely into your diet, whether weekly or daily. And then there's a few things that are hard to get, like with our purified water, a lot of the minerals that are normally, in our ancestral environment would have been dissolved in water are removed. So some things like magnesium are, beneficial to supplement because they're often, they normally have been obtained through water and they're removed from our water for the most part.
What are some things that people would avoid on a perfect health diet?
Yeah, so in general, any commonly eaten food is okay as long as you don't get too much of it. Things you can easily get too much of are, mostly the seeds and grains,
Mhm.
because plants don't want they want to be able to reproduce, so they don't want their seeds to be digested by animals when they eat them. So they typically surround them with a bran that has a lot of digestive inhibitors and other compounds that can act on animal cells and prevent them from, working. And uh, so if you eat too much of them, then they can potentially have a harmful effect. And so there's some controversy about how risky, grains or other kinds of seeds could be if you eat a lot. Or exactly where, what amount, would become risky versus non-risky.
Mhm.
I think in general, they're probably fine as long as you don't make them a staple of your diet. But, most people do make wheat, or other grains a staple of their diet. They get a lot of their food from, the average person gets maybe 30% of calories from grains.
Mhm.
And that's a lot to get from, one or a few sources. So in general, we encourage people to minimize seeds, legumes, things that, the plants that are important for reproduction of plants and that would allow them, where they would put a lot of compounds that would act on mammalian digestion. And then another thing to avoid are omega-6 fats and
Mhm.
vegetable seed oils. So those were not really abundant in our Paleolithic environment. So they're really found in, mostly in plants that grow at quite northern latitudes, and they're generally in the natural foods accompanied by a lot of toxins, so they're not really edible.
Mhm.
And so they really entered our diet through modern chemistry and through textile manufacturing. So cotton growing produced a lot of cotton seeds, and the cotton seeds were highly toxic, and there was no good way to dispose of them. If you burn them, you get all the toxic compounds into the air. And so, it was a big problem. How do you dispose of these things? And so the chemists, went to work on detoxifying them, and they figured out how to pull the main toxins out of them and be left with an oil that, they hoped you could eat safely. And so cottonseed oil became, because they just had so many cotton seeds, it was a waste product. The cottonseed oil was almost free, and it became, you know uh, people were attracted to the low price of the oil, and a liquid oil is easier to store and use than a solid oil like butter. uh,
Mhm.
and so they became very popular, and soybean oil, canola oil, which comes from the rapeseed plant, and others, they figured out how to take out the worst toxins and and get you the oil. But what's become increasingly clear is that the omega-6 fats themselves are a problem. And also the extensive treatment these things need to go to can also alter the oils. So, um, but just the omega-6 fats themselves in excess, so we need them, at levels of like 1 to 3% of our diet. But
Mhm.
as the amount eaten gets above 3%, then they start to become problematic, and they start to induce obesity and reduced energy expenditure, kind of torpor. and the average American is eating 10 to 15% of calories in the form of omega-6 fats. And so it's definitely a major factor in the obesity epidemic, in diabetes, and a number of other health issues. So I would say those are, the biggest, concerning foods that people get too much of and should cut back on. And, the ones they should be adding more of are things like eggs, dairy, fruits, berries, safe starches, like potatoes and, salmon, meat, fish, eggs, and, bone, joint, tendon, shellfish, things like that.
I love shellfish. Where do you stand on dairy? Because like I hear you say dairy, but like is milk okay? Or are you talking more like the butter and sour cream or cheese?
Yeah. So generally fatty or fermented dairy is the safest, and you can have almost unlimited amounts of, let's say cheese, yogurt, sour cream. And milk is more problematic. Mainly the main issue is the lactose, because galactose, which is digested into galactose and glucose, and the galactose is neurotoxic in high doses. So, you should probably limit milk to like 1 glass a day. Potentially 2, but potentially 2 if your diet is lower in carbs. But you want to be cautious, and if you notice any kind of neuropathy, or your balance isn't as good, or other neurological things, then I would try cutting back on milk. And some people say they can be sensitive to milk, and in that case, the more fermented dairy products will be better.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. What do you feel about the quality of milk? Should it be raw? Can it be conventional but organic? Like, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons. So definitely the milk that you commonly get in the supermarket is fairly processed. So they take the original milk, they split it into its component ingredients so that they can make things like butter or low-fat milk. They can recombine the pieces in different forms, so there's a bunch of stuff going on in a factory which has the potential to impact the quality of the ultimate product. Raw milk is a lot more natural. If it's unpasteurized, then you have the risk of pathogens or microbes from the cow that could infect you. So some kind of natural. And then there's the question of how healthy was the cow, what kind of diet was the cow eating, and that can impact milk quality as well. So the ideal situation would be a pastured cow that lived a healthy life and was healthy itself, and milk that is pasteurized, but otherwise as fresh from the cow as possible. And if you trust your farmer, then raw milk could be good.
Yeah, I wanted you to help me break down the aspect of if somebody's goal is weight loss, because you have a specific section in your book on weight loss too. Is milk going to be real ideal for them? Because there's different schools of thought, and I with all due respect to Dr. Peat, because I love the man, but milk is a food that makes baby cattle grow. And so to me, a lot of excess milk, not to say that milk is bad, but if weight loss is someone's goal, are they really going to see a lot of weight loss? Or conversely, the people that are coming to me to consult with me that have been following the ways of the I don't want to call it the Peat diet, because Dr. Peat would never say there was this diet, that he wanted people to be on. He would just say what he did. And so, but they come to me and they say, I feel good, but I'm putting on lots of weight. And now some might argue that's weight they needed to put on. Maybe their adrenals were worn out and their thyroid had been damaged. They needed to put on weight. But I don't always see that. I feel like it's above and beyond the weight that this person needs to carry. So is milk a weight gain food that some people, if their goal is weight loss, really need to dial it back?
Yeah, so milk is generally a healthful food. It does have the potential to be high in a lot of hormones, which could have their own health consequences. So it's an unusual food in that respect. In terms of its promotion of growth, it does, when children drink it, it does make them taller, so like the Dutch who drink a lot of milk, were the like the tallest people in Europe for a long time. And in adults, it tends to promote muscle gain, and so a lot of weightlifters and bodybuilders who wanted a muscular, lean physique, traditionally ate a lot of eggs and dairy. So milk and eggs was a good recipe for for gaining muscle. So there definitely is the potential for some a little distortion of your biology compared to other foods. So I would say a lot of this, if the dairy is fermented, then a lot of these concerning compounds get processed out. There's like one pass of digestion by the fermenting microbes along the way. And if you limit milk to like 1 glass or at most 2 a day, then I don't think you need to be that concerned about it. Now, I'm not personally that knowledgeable on this, but I have heard, people in like the Western Knee Price Society, express concern about, these commercial mass dairying operations, and what they kind of do to increase milk production, and what that can do to the hormone content of milk. And so I don't have personal knowledge of that, but anytime you make something like a staple food and a very large part of your diet, then you're at risk if there are risky things going in. So it's always a good idea to kind of diversify your diet and not rely on one kind of food for too much of your calories, and then you don't need to be too concerned about the details.
That I love what you just said, like diversify your diet. And that's what really resonated with me when I read The Perfect Health Diet, is because that slogan that is so simple, everything in moderation, plays in, but it's everything in moderation that is an actual food, not like these cereals and things like that. All of those obviously are processed. And so what you had put together was like, there was like a little leaf on the apple that breaks down all the different food groups. And even the little leaf had chocolate in it, and like just little odds and ends that you could add in here and there, but those weren't your staples. They were just your here and there's. But your staples were really logical, like foods that if we were growing them ourselves or raising the animal ourselves, that you would have access to. And it just made a lot of sense. And it's just common sense. People need to go back to common sense, and that's what your approach is. Now, one thing I loved too was your stance on fruit, because fruit gets a bad rap. Fruit is like, oh, it's fructose is deadly. Well, that's different if you're talking high fructose versus fructose from fruit. So tell me why fruit is okay for people listening to this to engage in.
Yeah, well, fruit, so of course it's a natural whole food, and generally speaking, if something had to support life, as you know, the flesh of an animal or a plant had to do, then it's has a good chance of being able to support our life. Especially if it's digestible, which which fruits are. And actually, fruits are designed by the plants to be appetizing to animals, so that the animals will will eat the seed, and what they try to protect is the seed within the fruit, so that will come out with manure somewhere, a little removed from the original plant, so that the plant can, proliferate and spread, and have child plants, as it were, that aren't, immediately next to it and competing with it.
Right.
So fruit is in general quite healthy, and the amount of calories in fruit are not really that large. So in most common fruits, there's about 200 calories per pound, and half of them are fructose. So the ideal, and it's actually beneficial to have some fructose in your diet, because it enables the liver to convert glucose to glycogen a little more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helps with regulation of blood glucose.
Mm-hmm.
So having a minority of your carbs as fructose is beneficial, and the fruits can enable you to achieve that. So so eating about eating a reasonable amount of fruit, like I think about 3 pieces of fruit a day is what we recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 pieces of fruit and a serving of berries.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very healthful amount of fruit. And so there's no reason to to slander fruit. It's
Right. Yes, absolutely. Now let's talk about the thyroid, because that is something I see affected in so many people nowadays, and maybe because they're not eating according to their cell structure to turn over a good healthy thyroid, such as taking in carbohydrates, because a lot of people are afraid of them. But what about the thyroid?
Yeah, well, like you say, it's an extremely common illness. So, probably 30% of the population is hypothyroid to some degree. They may not be classified that way by the doctors, but they actually have impaired health because of impaired thyroid function.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically hypothyroidism, it's influenced by nutritional deficiencies or nutritional excesses,
Mm-hmm.
like too little or too much iodine, or too little or too much selenium will cause problems. But then it's also the most common cause of thyroid issues is some kind of gut dysbiosis, leading to inflammation and, oxidative stress surrounding inflammation, and, lack of the nutrition to protect tissue from immune activity.
Mm-hmm.
And the thyroid just happens to be a very sensitive organ. So, it has these, very reactive compounds. Iodine is a very reactive atom, and so it's handling, like these high energy compounds, and it can easily be at risk, being injured by various problems. And so it tends to be, like the canary in the coal mine. It's when you have a problem from gut dysbiosis, the thyroid tends to be the first organ that's affected. And so people, but it tends to be pretty straightforward to fix as well. By natural means. When you clean things up, it'll typically heal, and it may take some time, but you'll usually see gradual improvement. Over it could take as long as 2 years to completely heal.
Mm-hmm.
So things oriented to protection of the gut include vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, circadian rhythm entrainment, time restricted feeding can help. Good nutrition, extracellular matrix helps healing any injury. So including both problems with the gut lining and with the thyroid. And then, some key nutrients like zinc and copper are important as antioxidants, optimizing iodine and selenium. So there's typically a lot of mistakes. I would say the average American is probably making about 8 different key mistakes that tend to generate hypothyroidism. And, fixing those will almost always tend to lead to healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in your book, you have some pillars of the perfect health diet, and you just mentioned one, which was circadian rhythm and training that circadian rhythm. And that part was why I hadn't done the NTA, the Nutrition Therapy Association, when I read your book. And it was why I picked the NTA, because they talked about it too. Like everything that I picked for schooling as a nutritionist way back in the day was based on what I learned in your book, because I was like, if it doesn't match up to this, I don't want to take the course. So so circadian rhythm is huge because it's not just about the food. It really has to do with that rhythm that our body relies on. The earth has a rhythm, we have a rhythm, and when we match that, we get a lot more results. So talk to me about why you incorporate that in the perfect health diet.
Yeah, so it really is a critical component of health. And, so in some way, we probably should have named the book just Perfect Health instead of
Yeah,
Perfect Health Diet. But
right.
um, yeah, so in terms of lifestyle, there are a lot of lifestyle things you can do to impact health, but they all seem to go back through the central issue of circadian rhythm entrainment. So like exercise entrains circadian rhythms in skeletal muscle. The timing of eating entrains it in the liver. Exposure to sunlight entrains the brain. And it turns out that if your various organs are not, if they don't have the clocks on the same cycle, then you get health problems. And also if you don't have the clock cycling with the right amplitude, so you don't exercise enough to get the clock, if your skeletal muscle doesn't know whether it's day or night because you're inactive, both times, then you won't have the clock won't be giving the right signals. And the body, it really needs to coordinate across all the organs, and it needs to do the right things at the right times. So in our health retreats, I use the analogy, if you're trying to move a sofa, you need to have one mover at each end lifting the sofa. And if somebody lifts on one end and tries to move it, then the other end will, drag along the floor and scratch the floor, or you may not be able to move it. And, so it's the same way in the body. In order to accomplish a lot of things, all your cells have to work together. And how do the cells know, what to do when? It's through their circadian rhythms. And if you have different rhythms, if they think it's a different time of day, then you'll be in the situation where, one part of the body is lifting one side of the sofa at one time of day and the other one isn't. And then later in the day, the other side is trying to lift its side of the sofa, but it doesn't have the partner picking the other end, and things just don't work. So it really is important to give those signals to the body. And so you do want to coordinate eating with exercise, with sleep, with light exposure, with stress exposure, personal interactions, those all those Zeitgebers, the time givers to the body. So people, it is a very important aspect of health. It's, for most people, it's similar in importance to diet. And it's especially important in aging. So part of the way, the aging program sabotages our health is to disrupt circadian rhythms. So we don't get our circadian rhythms diminish in amplitude with age, and they don't entrain as easily. And, and that's why elderly people tend not to sleep well, and, and they tend not to have good immunity. But if you, work hard to entrain your rhythms, you can, essentially rejuvenate yourself significantly. And, So especially as you get older, circadian rhythm entrainment becomes very, very important. Typically in children and young people, your body will often make the circadian rhythms right, even if you're not giving the right stimulus. But as you get older, you really need to focus on, stimulating them correctly.
Yeah, are there a few tips you could give people how to start doing that, how to really start to entrain their circadian rhythm?
Yeah. So what I recommend is define a personal 12-hour day and 12-hour night that you keep to, routinely year round. And that means in winter when the days are short, you need to have, you need to kind of lengthen the day relative to the natural one. And in the summer when the days are long, you need to shorten the natural day. And what you want to do in the 12-hour daytime is make sure that everywhere you go, you're exposed to very bright white light. So 5,000 Kelvin color temperature, very high intensity light indoors. And then during the 12-hour night, you want to have only red, orange, yellow light. So, I recommend buying orange light bulbs and just switch over. So, our day goes from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And at 7:30 p.m. we turn off all the white lights and we turn on the orange lights, and we have an orange house. So think of like the color of our of a campfire. Would be the kind of lighting you have at night. And so a campfire has essentially no blue or green light, and it's blue or green colors light that gives us our daytime signal and tells the body it's daytime. So you want to get rid of all blue or green, so no white light, and just have red, orange, yellow lighting. And we do that outdoors as well. So we have yellow LED lights outside so that the animals aren't disrupted in their circadian rhythms. And then you want to, all of your calories should come in the daytime, nothing at all at night. And ideally earlier in the day, so, morning or midday. Your biggest meal should be at midday. So around lunchtime, preferably only a light supper or dessert. And it's not a bad thing to confine all your eating to maybe 8 hours and have a 16-hour fast overnight. And with the 8-hour feeding window biased toward the early part of the 12-hour day. And then it's a good idea to always exercise before eating. So kind of earn your food with some exercise. Everyone should get 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a day, or an hour and a half of walking, or you can do less than 30 minutes if it's more intense. But you should try to get some exercise every day, and ideally mostly before meals, and so morning or afternoon. No real exercise at night, so night should be relaxing. Stress, and especially personal interactions and any stressful personal interaction, should be in the daytime. Nighttime should be calm, relaxed, intimate. Interactions are good but not stressful ones.
Yeah.
So if you're going to argue with your spouse, schedule the argument for the morning. So those are the main circadian time givers. It's food, exercise, light exposure, and stress interactions. And so in general, in the daytime, you want to get faces, voices, drama. Those are good things. So watching soap operas, that's great for the middle of the day. But at night, you don't want a lot of soap operas. So
and I would add, like, checking email at night. That could be kind of toxic if you're getting an email that you're like, oh, now I have to think about this. Save those emails for in the part of the day where your brain has the capacity to think about it and you're more in that mode of
Yeah.
like handling big deals other than at night when you're trying to, like you said, wind down and calm down. So it's really our sins against nature. That's what the perfect health diet really is about. It's like when you're eating foods that are outside of nature, when you're doing things that are outside of nature, when you're not getting the right light and you're not getting the right nutrition and the right lifestyle that matches like a normal human. If we didn't have all these modern conveniences, how would we live? And so when we go back to that, it's really going back to the way that health should be, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
Now, where do you stand on EMF exposure, like non-native things, our devices, our Wi-Fi and stuff like that? I always like to ask guests this question.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. So I guess it's becoming clear that EMF does have an impact on the body, and there is potential for it to cause harm. And we're increasingly learning that you can use microwaves as a weapon. And there have been these reports of like Havana syndrome affecting the US diplomats and other things which might be EMF, some kind of EMF weapons.
Mm.
And so yeah, people have been learning, and there's definitely increasing evidence that various frequencies of microwave energy can impact health. And I would say it's not necessarily all that clear exactly what to do about it. It's hard in our current environment to do away with cell phones, and so ideally you could use well, there are some simple things you can do, like grounding your bed is one way to minimize EMF exposure while you're sleeping. You can also use Ethernet cables in place of Wi-Fi, to give your computers access to the internet. So those are shielded, so they'll minimize radiation. You can try to hold your cell phone farther from your head when you're doing calls, or generally keep it a little farther from your body rather than always carrying it at your belt or right next to you. So there are some things to do, and I guess it's still an open question exactly how significant the health issues from EMF are, but it does seem like they can, that there can be issues. So it's hard. We haven't really done controlled experiments, and then like there's always these new generations. 5G is different than 4G, and so it may be a little hard to figure out exactly how significant the impact is.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've only been with these little rectangles in our hand for 20 some years now, so that's not enough time to see what it's doing. But it stands to reason it is another sin against nature, because natural humans never had these things. So it's like the more we can decrease our exposure to them, the better. So let's shift gears now, and I want you to tell me about this Angiex, because this is something that's new to me. I've followed you for years, but I'm just new to this drug that you're working on. So fill us in on that.
Yeah, so so I've considered myself a scientist entrepreneur. So you mentioned I was originally a physicist, and then I left to help start a software company. So I was a software entrepreneur before PhD, and I really enjoyed that. So I considered myself an entrepreneur. And my wife is a biomedical scientist at first Children's Hospital, and then Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, and Harvard Medical School. And so she was researching cancer therapies, and I told her, if you discover a way to cure cancer, then I'll help you start a company to make it happen. And she did. So I had to help her start a company, and so we did that in 2015, and we made what we believe is a great drug, and we're heading into the clinic now, so we'll, hopefully prove that the drug works in the first half of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an exciting time for us. And so the nice thing about the drug, it has several mechanisms of action, but so it attacks some universal mechanisms of cancers, which make them, which are actually precisely the hallmarks of cancer that make them deadly. So one of them is what's called angiogenesis, the ability to stimulate the growth of new blood vessels to enable tumors to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so our drug specifically attacks the angiogenic tumor blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So it can take away the ability of the tumor to gain blood supply.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tumors will shrink because we can destroy the tumor blood vessels without affecting the normal blood vessels of the body.
Okay.
And then that has another benefit, is when you injure blood vessels anywhere, then the immune system notices and gets excited and surveys it to see what's wrong and try to fix it. And so when it sees an injury in the blood vessels of the tumor, then it goes there and looks, is there something foreign? Are there any infections here? Why did this happen? And it will often detect that, there's this cancer here, that, there's something foreign, and eliminate the cancer. And, so that's that activation of anti-cancer immunity is a great way to generate curative results. And then it turns out that cancer cells, in order to invade or metastasize, they have to interact with the tumor with the vascular endothelium, and they do it with precisely the same protein that the endothelial cells use to grow, and and to expand vessels. And so essentially all invasive and metastatic tumor cells are sensitive to our drug. And so we can potentially kill all the invasive and metastatic tumor cells and convert the tumor into a benign tumor. So a lot of opportunities, potentially to have a universal therapy for any growing tumor. And the other nice thing about the vascular mechanism is instead of targeting tumor cells, which are mutated and heterogeneous, so there's always a resistant subpopulation, which can bring the cancer back. But when you're treating the tumor vasculature, it's an unmutated host system, and it's very consistent in its response. And so this could be the first oncology drug which can work in 100% of patients, and in which the cancers can never develop resistance to the therapy. So it's an exciting opportunity, and and we hope to bring a lot of value to cancer patients.
Oh, absolutely. And you couldn't be more on top of where we're in a society now where so many people are dealing with cancer. So the timing is perfect for you to come out with this, because even half my client load are people that are dealing with some form of cancer. So it's very prevalent. And now, am I hearing that this drug also is not going to attack normal cells? It's only going after the tumor cells. So somebody who would be on a chemo drug, who gets really sick and everything about their body gets destroyed on chemo, it wouldn't happen with this type of drug. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So, so that's what, we have to find the right way of treating so that people don't experience severe toxicities. So there are some normal cells which will take up some drug, but fortunately there's the potential to get good results in the tumor while keeping the dose that goes in the normal cells at doses low enough that they can metabolize it and get rid of the drug before it ever builds up to a toxic dose. So Paracelsus's rule, the dose makes the poison. So it's only when you get the dose up to a certain level that the toxin becomes a poison, and otherwise it can be relatively harmless and you can get rid of it. So that's the goal, is to find a way of treating, like a dosing schedule, so that the dose that builds up in normal cells is always below the poisonous level, and the dose that's in the tumor is high enough to be effective and remove your cancer. And so yeah, we're quite optimistic, and but it will take some clinical research to find that. And if you dosed high enough, then you would have toxicities. Now, fortunately, in animals, we can always achieve efficacy at doses that are safe. And, so the animals act like they don't notice they're being treated. They eat, sleep, move normally, and the tumors go away. And we have to go to much higher doses in order to cause toxicities. So we'll see what happens in people. So we're optimistic, but
yeah,
you have to test it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it, is because like I lost my own mom to cancer. So if I can do anything to promote something that I always say, she actually died from the chemo made her so sick that her body couldn't withstand it. So if there's a drug out there that could actually go to the root of the problem, which is the tumor vascularity, and that's what it sounds like this is doing. And so, yeah, this is something that's really exciting. I hope that we can see it come to the forefront.
Yeah, we're excited. We can't wait to see how it does, and if it works as well in people as it has in animals, then it'll be transformative.
Wonderful. Okay, so as we wrap up here, I know that I am in love with your book. I read it over and over. It's always on my shelf. But where can people find your book if they haven't heard of it, or if they want to check it out? And then also you have a version in Chinese that's coming out as well, or has come out.
Yeah, we're quite happy. So we have German, Hungarian, UK, Australian editions, and we're very happy that a Chinese edition has just come out with a prestigious Beijing-based publisher, one of the leading scientific university presses in China. So people can go to Amazon, they can go to our website, perfecthealthdiet.com, and so just about any bookseller should have it. It's published by Simon & Schuster, by the Scribner imprint. So the same imprint for Hemingway and lots of other leading novelists. And they got into health. We were one of the first health books that they published. So the book is readily available, and I hope people enjoy it.
Oh, I know they will. I still do after reading it like 16 times. Okay, and then about AngieX, where can they find you with regard to that if they want to look up that and just research it some more?
Yeah, they can go to angiex.com, angiex.com.
Okay, great. I'll have all that in the show notes too. So thank you so much for your time today, Paul. I know it's very limited, so I was so excited when you were able to come on, and hopefully we can have you back on when that drug goes to help people, and we can talk more about it. So
okay. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Bye.
That your needs and diet are as unique as your fingerprint. That's why not every diet in the world will work for you, because you're special, okay? So as your nutritionist, I believe in your bio-individuality, and it's my job to act as your nutrition detective and find the root of your issues and create a more optimized you 2.0. So are you looking to ease some digestive distress, or maybe dial in your sleep? What about lowering environmental stress that could be causing, stuff like undue anxiety? What about food struggles and emotional connections to food? Or maybe you're simply suffering from diet confusion and not sure where to start to improve your health. That's where I come in. So let's set up a free 15-minute call to see if I'm right for you. That's right. All you're going to do is email me at getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. That's JODELLE. And let's just chat about you and see if we're a good match when it comes to getting you the results you've been waiting for. And no matter where you are, you could be in Asia, Brazil, Chicago, or somewhere in between, we can connect via Zoom or phone or any way you like to get you the results and your health once and for all. Let me be your guide and let me get you there.
What would it feel like to have virtually every supplement known to man at your fingertips? And what if you only had to drink water to get them in? I firmly believe in frequency. It's what you feel when you touch a rock that's warmed by the sun. It's how your text message gets to your friend's phone thousands of miles away. It's lightning, it's wind, it's brain waves, it's microwaves. Everything has frequency, and now you can write frequencies of different substances into your water, since water holds frequencies. Listen to a podcast I did with Anton Fedorenko, a leading expert on frequency, and then visit the link in the show notes to Infopathy, a way to infuse your water with the frequency of any substance or supplement that you want, even peptides, without ever spending a penny on them. Check the show notes now for a link to Infopathy and a special discount code just for my listeners.